One single night shattered 3 centuries of sacred Ottoman traditions and altered the destiny of 3 continents. What you're about to hear unveils secrets long buried. The forbidden story of how a 15-year-old slave girl broke 5 untouchable imperial laws in one wedding ceremony, sparking a quiet revolution that would haunt emperors for generations. Her name was Hurrem Sultan, Roxolana to the west, the woman who defied ancient codes no ruler had dared to violate since 1326. But what happened in 1534 was not simply a marriage, it was an intimate coup carried out in the hidden chambers of Topkapi Palace, using the arts of seduction she had mastered within the imperial harem. Prepare to step into the darkest mysteries of Ottoman history. Records uncovered in Vatican archives speak of rituals, clandestine rites, and marital strategies that transformed a Ukrainian captive into the most feared woman of her age. Every broken rule was not accident, but part of a calculated design that gave rise to the Sultanate of Women, a century and a half when veiled figures behind marble walls secretly steered the empire. What you will discover now may forever change how you see power, desire, and the unseen forces that shape history. For when chronicles praise Suleiman the Magnificent, they conceal a far more unsettling truth. The true master of an empire stretching from Hungary to Yemen was a woman no man dared name aloud. But before we plunge into this forbidden chapter, I need a small favor. If you are drawn to these untold imperial secrets as much as I am, show it by liking this video right now. That small act helps me continue unearthing the darkest shadows of history. And here's where you decide what comes next. Leave in the comments the name of any queen, empress, or noblewoman whose forbidden story you want exposed. The one with the most mentions will lead our next descent into history's hidden chambers. Will it be betrayal, vengeance, or a tale of raw passion? That choice is yours. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications, because what follows about Hurrem will leave you breathless. The year was 1520. Suleiman ascended the Ottoman throne, inheriting an empire that spanned 3 continents and dominated the richest trade routes on earth. Constantinople, now Istanbul, stood as the epicenter of Islamic might, where spices from India, treasures from Africa, and silks from Asia all converged. Yet within the glittering halls of Topkapi, ancient traditions held a fragile order in place. The first was the sacred rule of one concubine, one son, a law that ensured no mother could rise above the rest. The second, no sultan could ever marry a slave, for imperial unions were reserved for princesses of foreign courts. The third, no woman was ever permitted to dwell in Topkapi, the seat of government, to keep politics untouched by desire. The fourth, rigid titles defined every rank within the harem, never to be altered. And the fifth, women were strictly barred from councils of war, diplomacy, or statecraft. For centuries, these 5 codes safeguarded the empire from chaos, blood feuds, and fratricidal wars. But in 1521, everything began to unravel. That year, a young Ukrainian girl, only 15, was brought into the imperial harem. Seized during Tatar raids on Rohatyn, she was sold in the slave markets of Kaffa before being delivered to Hafsa Sultan, the mother of Suleiman. No one could have guessed that this red-haired teenager with piercing eyes would topple every sacred law and forever transform the balance of Ottoman power. Her name at birth was Alexandra Anastasia Lisovska, daughter of a modest Orthodox priest in Rohatyn. Her early days were filled with prayers and embroidery lessons, never hinting at the storm awaiting her. But when Tatar horsemen swept into her village, she was torn from her family and thrust into the brutal world of slavery. In the markets of Kaffa, traders prized her pale skin, Slavic beauty, and above all her fiery hair, a rarity that raised her value. Yet it wasn't just her appearance. Her sharp mind and graceful bearing set her apart. In Istanbul, the Valid Sultan Hafsa quickly recognized her potential. For months, Alexandra was trained relentlessly. She learned Ottoman Turkish, Persian, and the basics of Arabic. She mastered court etiquette, music, dance, and, most importantly, the refined arts of seduction that turned concubines into instruments of power. Her transformation was complete when she received a new name, Hurrem, meaning the one who brings joy. It marked not only her rebirth, but her entry into the most dangerous game in the empire. Suleiman himself, at just 26, had ascended as both poet and warrior, blending classical education with military skill. European envoys described him as tall, refined, with an aquiline nose, piercing eyes, and a quiet authority. His love for poetry and the arts distinguished him from his predecessors. And in 1521, when his gaze first met Hurrem's, neither could imagine that their union would ignite a revolution destined to reshape the empire. She carried the steel of survival. He held absolute power. Together, they would write the most forbidden chapter of Ottoman history. The winter of 1533 marked the beginning of preparations cloaked in absolute secrecy. No official chronicler dared record them, yet fragments of diplomatic letters and eunuch testimonies reveal the scale of what was about to unfold. Hurrem had spent 13 years not only securing Suleiman's devotion, but also perfecting a strategy designed to tear down the very foundations of Ottoman order. The first breach had been years in the making. While custom dictated that concubines bear only one son before being set aside, Hurrem broke this law again and again. Mehmed in 1521, Mehmed in 1522, Selim in 1524, Bayezid in 1525, followed by Abdullah and Shehzada Jihangir. Each child represented an act of defiance against the sacred principle meant to prevent any single woman from holding dynastic power. Traditionally, once a concubine gave birth to a son, she was never again summoned to the Sultan's bed. Hurrem shattered that precedent, monopolizing Suleiman's lineage after Mustafa, the son of Mahadevran, was exiled to govern a distant province. Whispers spread through the harem. Eunuchs and viziers alike saw danger in her growing influence. Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha, Suleiman's closest ally, repeatedly warned against the power concentrated in this Slavic woman. In secret letters, he cautioned that she threatened the balance of the dynasty itself. Yet Hurrem was always one step ahead. Her strength lay not only in her children, but in her mastery of psychology. In Suleiman's most intimate hours, she offered not only affection, but political counsel, wrapped in irresistible seduction. Over time, the Sultan began to consult her before making decisions of state. Foreign ambassadors watched in disbelief. Venetian envoy Bernardo Navagero wrote in 1530, "This woman of barbarian origin wields more influence over His Imperial Majesty than any councillor. No decision is made without her." Her second violation required unprecedented boldness. Since the reign of Orhan in the 14th century, no Ottoman sultan had ever married a concubine. Royal weddings were reserved for foreign princesses, never for slaves. Yet Hurrem resolved to change this. First, she removed her greatest obstacle, Hafsa Sultan, Suleiman's mother, and the only woman powerful enough to oppose her. Official records claim she died of illness in 1534, but palace physicians later suggested signs of slow arsenic poisoning. With Hafsa gone, Hurrem moved to undermine Ibrahim Pasha himself. A whisper campaign painted him as ambitious, even treacherous, gradually eroding Suleiman's trust. At the same time, Hurrem tightened her hold over Suleiman's emotions. She alternated fragility with fierce loyalty, threatening to leave the palace if her position remained insecure. Suleiman, bound to her in more than desire, gave in. The marriage preparations began in secret, a scandal in themselves. Because the law forbade a slave's union with a sultan, scholars were persuaded to approve a loophole. Hurrem would be formally freed by imperial decree the very day of the wedding. Technically legal, but to the old guard, it was nothing short of heresy, a slave elevated to empress. The third violation came with her move from the old palace to Topkapi itself, the empire's beating political heart. Since the conquest of Constantinople, women of the harem had been forbidden from residing within government halls, a law meant to keep passion and politics apart. Yet in 1534, a suspicious fire was reported at the old palace, conveniently justifying Hurrem's relocation. Later investigations found no evidence of serious damage. The fire was likely staged, an excuse for her permanent presence at Topkapi. From her new chambers, Hurrem gained something no woman before her had possessed: direct access to power. Specially constructed barred windows allowed her to watch the meetings of the Imperial Council. Secret passageways linked her rooms to Suleiman's chambers, enabling private discussions during state sessions. These tunnels, uncovered centuries later, revealed the architectural precision of a conspiracy designed to weave her influence into the very structure of the palace. The fourth violation would be even more audacious: the invention of an entirely new title within the Ottoman hierarchy, one never before granted to any woman of the harem. The title Haseki Sultan did not exist in Ottoman tradition. Hurrem needed a rank that would elevate her above every concubine, imperial princess, and even the wives of viziers, one with no precedent her enemies could use against her. It was a brilliant act of political invention. Haseki came from Persian, meaning the sole favorite, while the addition of Sultan, a word once reserved only for male royals, gave her an authority equal to Europe's crowned empresses. For a former slave, it was unthinkable. Palace scholars bent over manuscripts, twisting classical texts into theological justifications for this audacious new title. The preserved documents in the palace library reveal how strained and radical these arguments truly were, exposing the intellectual acrobatics required to legitimize what tradition forbade. But Hurrem's boldest violation was yet to come: her direct participation in the empire's government. Women of the harem had always been confined to reproduction and entertainment, their voices sealed away from politics, war, and diplomacy. Hurrem demolished that barrier. Through eunuchs, hand-picked concubines, and bribed servants, she built a secret information network that rivaled the empire's own intelligence services. No intrigue, no alliance, no betrayal escaped her notice. Armed with this web of knowledge, she anticipated conspiracies before they erupted, identified weaknesses among rivals, and whispered strategies to Suleiman that shaped the fate of nations. Foreign ambassadors soon realized the truth. Access to Ottoman power required winning over Hurrem herself. The French envoy Antoine Escalin de la Garde wrote in 1541, "He who seeks favor from the Grand Turk must first secure the goodwill of his sultana, for no decision is made without her." The wedding night at last arrived, its exact date conspicuously erased from official chronicles. For 13 years she had maneuvered for this moment, and now the empire held its breath. The ceremony was unlike anything seen before. Byzantine jewelers, Arab perfumers, and masters of imperial fashion prepared her in secret, transforming a slave girl into a figure of empress-like majesty. Treasures once reserved for dynastic princesses adorned her, while the ceremony itself fused Islamic ritual with Byzantine imperial pomp, a symbolic union of cultures and a clear statement that she had redrawn the very rules of power. Every gesture, every vow carried weight far beyond the wedding itself. Those present understood they were witnessing not just a marriage, but a constitutional upheaval. The bridal chambers, decorated with opulence surpassing even coronations, became the stage where legal, religious, and political boundaries were all broken at once. Yet beyond ritual, the night sealed her dominance. After this union, no great decision would bypass her. The hours that followed were not only about intimacy, but about strategy. Together, Hurrem and Suleiman planned reforms, succession policies, and ways to silence the backlash that would erupt across the empire. Venetian spies reported the event with confusion at first, calling it an eccentricity of the Sultan. Only later did they realize this was not romance, but revolution disguised as matrimony. The transformation was immediate. Hurrem's 5 transgressions shook the empire like an earthquake, altering the balance of power across 3 continents. The first consequence struck at dynastic stability itself. By breaking the rule of one concubine, one son, she created a crisis unlike any before. With 6 of her children positioned against Mustafa, the eldest son of Mahidevran, the threat of a fratricidal war loomed over the dynasty. Mahidevran, once the Sultan's favoured consort and mother of the presumed heir, suffered a swift and brutal fall. Archival records show her allowance was slashed, her chambers reassigned, and her attendants reassigned to Hurrem's service. Letters later uncovered from her hand reveal her despair at being pushed into irrelevance. while realizing her son Mustafa now faced rivals backed by a mother far more powerful than herself. Hurrem's campaign against Mustafa became her most dangerous game. Over 2 decades, she wove a ruthless smear campaign, slowly poisoning Suleiman's trust in his own son. Step by step, she prepared the ground for a struggle that would plunge the empire into blood. Hurrem's deadliest move came through the shadows of the palace. Using her network of spies, she planted forged evidence that Prince Mustafa, Suleiman's firstborn, and the Janissaries' beloved commander, was conspiring with the empire's sworn enemies, the Safavids. The deception reached its climax in 53 during Suleiman's Persian campaign. Together with her ally, Rustem Pasha, now Grand Vizier through marriage to Hurrem's daughter Mihrimah, she produced documents so flawless they bore Mustafa's own personal seal, stolen through bribes from his secretaries. Summoned to his father's tent on the plains of Konya, Mustafa walked in, trusting the ancient guarantee of safety princes were granted during family audiences. But behind the silk curtains, the mute executioners lay in wait. In that suffocating space, they seized him with bowstrings, strangling the air as Suleiman himself stood unmoved, watching the life drain from his eldest son. The empire shook. Chronicles recorded Janissary uprisings in protest of their murdered commander, revolts that had to be crushed with brutal force, temporarily crippling Ottoman strength on several fronts. In Europe, courts reacted instantly. Charles V, Ferdinand I of Austria, and Francis I recalibrated their policies, calculating how Ottoman instability might be exploited to reclaim lands or forge new alliances. But Mustafa's death was only the first shockwave. From it rippled 5 monumental transformations that reshaped the empire. First, Suleiman's marriage to Hurrem set a precedent that shattered centuries of dynastic custom. No longer would Ottoman rulers be bound to unions with foreign princesses. From then on, slave concubines could be elevated to legitimate imperial wives. The balance of power with Europe shifted. Royal marriages were no longer tools of diplomacy. Hurrem's own daughter-in-law, Nurbanu Sultan, of Venetian origin and once a slave herself, became the first to benefit, claiming the title of Haseki and continuing the revolution her mother-in-law began. Ambassadors across Europe had to rewrite their playbooks. Power no longer lay solely with the Sultan and his viziers. As the Venetian envoy Marino Cavalli warned in 1560, those who cling to the old methods will find themselves locked out of true influence. One must now court both the harem and the divan. Second, Hurrem broke the walls of Topkapi itself. For centuries, the harem had been separated from the machinery of rule, but her permanent residence inside the palace created unprecedented channels of influence. Architects constructed hidden passages and secret chambers that allowed her to observe imperial councils, even installing primitive devices to carry whispers through the walls. Ministers never knew if their words were being overheard by the Sultana or her spies. The paranoia this created twisted court culture into an early system of political surveillance, a precursor to modern state security. Third, the invention of the title Haseki Sultan permanently elevated the rank of imperial women. Once unique to Hurrem, it became a weapon used by later consorts, Safiye, Kursum, Turhan, to seize authority equal to viziers and princes. Court ceremonies, financial structures, and hierarchies had to be rewritten to accommodate this new power. Turhan Sultan, for example, drew an income of 2,000 aspas per day, rivaling provincial governors and entire military budgets. With it, she built mosques, hospitals, schools, and kitchens that competed with the grandest works of reigning sultans, extending Ottoman influence through charitable foundations that reached as far as Jerusalem, Mecca, and the Balkans. These endowments functioned as shadow embassies, diplomacy disguised as piety. Fourth, her role as direct political advisor broke the final taboo. Hurrem engaged in policy-making itself, establishing the precedent historians call the Sultanate of Women. For nearly 2 centuries, mothers, wives, and sisters of sultans would wield open or secret influence over imperial decisions. Letters preserved in European archives reveal Hurrem's correspondence with Sigismund II of Poland and German princes, where she negotiated alliances parallel to official diplomacy. She used her Slavic origin to forge bonds with Eastern leaders, while asserting dynastic authority as the mother of future rulers. Each of these revolutions was born from that single night, when a slave concubine defied 5 centuries of tradition, watched a prince strangled, and bent an empire to her will. Hurrem's shadow stretched far beyond her lifetime. The secret negotiations she conducted over prisoner exchanges, trade agreements, and marriage alliances often outmaneuvered the empire's official diplomats. Yet even she could not foresee how deeply her revolution would root itself in Ottoman politics. Her immediate successors seized the path she had cleared. Nurbanu Sultan and Safiye Sultan expanded female power within the palace, while underage or weak sultans saw their mothers, the Valide sultans, step in as de facto rulers. Hurrem Sultan, the most formidable of them all, directed the appointment of grand viziers, commanded provincial offices, and even decided military strategies across multiple fronts. She wielded such authority that she ordered the deposition and execution of sultans who threatened her dynasty's survival. This female ascendancy was not without resistance. The conservative ulema thundered against the corruption of tradition, denouncing women's intrusion into male domains. Treatises survive from that era, brimming with outrage at what they saw as sacrilege against Islam's order. Yet the system endured. Military campaigns continued to succeed, imperial finances held steady, and provincial administration functioned smoothly. Practical effectiveness silenced many critics. What had begun as scandal soon hardened into accepted reality. Abroad, Europe adapted. At first bewildered, foreign courts came to accept women as essential players in Ottoman politics. Ambassadors began bringing gifts specifically crafted for the sultanas, acknowledging them as legitimate actors of state. This diplomatic shift had ripple effects across Europe. Queens of France, Austria, and Spain watched with envy as their Ottoman counterparts bent empires to their will, and some quietly experimented with similar tactics within their own spheres. Hurrem's legacy also reshaped the cultural landscape. Her architectural patronage in Istanbul and Jerusalem combined faith, charity, and politics into monuments of female authority. Her complexes, mosques, schools, kitchens, and hospitals projected permanence, announcing that women's power in the Ottoman world was not a fleeting anomaly, but a force to be reckoned with. Her death in April 5058, 8 years before Suleiman's own, ended her physical reign, but not her revolution. Her mausoleum, beside the mosque she had endowed, became a quiet site of pilgrimage for women who saw inspiration from her triumphs. The trilingual inscriptions on her tomb, in Arabic, Persian, and Ottoman Turkish, praised her achievements in terms unimaginable for a slave girl just a generation earlier. Suleiman, shattered by her loss, decreed that no other woman would ever inhabit her chambers in Topkapi. That order held until the empire's dissolution in 1922, a silent monument to the singularity of her rule. Still, the machinery she built endured. Successors inherited her titles, her income structures, and her precedence. Through beauty, intelligence, fertility, and ruthless calculation, she had permanently bent one of the world's most conservative empires. Historians now see her as both strategist and architect of a political revolution. Yet the question lingers: did she blaze a trail for women broadly, or only secure power for herself and her bloodline? The truth is layered. Hurrem's victories were selfish, but the doors she broke open could never again be sealed. She left future women of the dynasty opportunities they would never have dreamed of under the old order. Her legacy was nothing less than seismic. The 5 traditions she shattered on her wedding night became the 5 pillars of a new political reality that endured for centuries. They proved that even in the most rigid systems, one woman's intelligence, patience, and audacity could remake the world. Hurrem Sultana did not simply secure her own survival in 1534. She rewrote the rules of empire, shifting the destinies of generations. And this is only one story. The archives of Europe and Asia conceal far darker secrets, betrayals that toppled kingdoms, whispered passions that ignited wars, and conspiracies that changed continents. If you were captivated by how a teenage slave became the architect of 2 centuries of Ottoman politics, imagine what lies hidden in the shadows of other courts, queens, consorts, and empresses who bent kings to their will. Their secrets are waiting. So subscribe, activate the bell, and join me each week as I unearth the most explosive mysteries of history. Share this story and tell me in the comments which queen or empress you want revealed next. History has always whispered its darkest secrets. The only question is, are you ready to hear them all?